Once upon a time, there was a young kid growing up in a household and being indoctrinated by everything related to Jehovah's Witness thinking. The way he walked, talked, dressed, and the decisions he made was all based on the Watchtower script. And then one day, he began to use critical thinking and came to the conclusion that he has way more options than sitting at the Kingdom Hall, waiting and waiting, turning the corner and waiting and watching the world pass him by. Our next guest not only left the Jehovah's Witness religion after waking up to the real truth about the truth, but he also got the entrepreneurial spirit and is working his own business. As a youngster, he realized that he could think outside the box and come up with ideas. And not only did he venture out into this business, but he's also working in this business with two other former Jehovah's Witnesses. So, in the upcoming presentation, you're going to learn a little bit more about this young man as he's going to give you some tips on your own decisions and things about your life. Welcome to another episode of The Critical Thought.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hi, this is Lady C.
Hey, this is JT.
And welcome to another episode of The Critical Thought.
The interview today is very special to me because this is a young man that, as we started talking, I found out something about him that I didn't know. And that is, he is part of the family of Jehovah's Witnesses that I grew up with as a kid in North Carolina. His cousins I used to play with, they would come down from New York City to stay with their uncle who was one of the elders in our congregation. Once I went to Bethel, I had a chance to meet more of his family when I was in New York. He comes from what we would refer to as a very prominent Jehovah's Witness family. So for him to get out with decades of family members in the organization, it is an accomplishment. Just to give you a reference point, in the video that I did early on years ago about why I left the organization, I made the point that there were basically three things that caused me to stop, take a step back, and re-examine Jehovah's Witnesses. And that was the teaching of 1914, the teaching that dealt with the alternative service, and the teaching on the sheep and the goat. The teaching that dealt with alternative service is something that stood out to me because this young man that we're going to introduce to you, it was one of his relatives who actually went to prison during the time of the Vietnam War, and he was impacted by the alternative service. So we want to introduce him to you. His story, we think, is very important because it demonstrates that even if you come from a prominent Jehovah's Witness family, you can still land on your feet and keep it moving. So, Lady C and I, we want to introduce everyone to Thomas.
Hi, this is Thomas, and in the upcoming podcast, I'm going to help explain some of the tips that helped me leave the Watchtower. Well, I come from a third-generation Jehovah's Witness family on my mother's side. My grandfather grew up in North Carolina. He ended up moving to New York City in his 20s, and he ended up meeting my grandmother. They got married, and it was in New York City where they were assigned to Florida to serve where the need was great. Back at that time, I believe this area was segregated. So they came down here to help out in the segregated circuit in the Tampa Bay area.
Since you're a third generation Jehovah's Witness, okay, so your mom and dad, you had mentioned to us earlier that your father is not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So you want to give us a little bit of background history about your family, your immediate family?
My mom, she had a period in her life where she wanted to, go out and venture out and, experience more independence in her life and more freedom. And in that period of her life, she ended up meeting my dad, and they, fell in love and started their relationship and eventually got married and then had us.
What was it like when your mom, who's coming from a prominent Jehovah's Witness family, decided to get involved with a worldly man, being that her family had this reputation that they wanted to maintain? What was that like for her?
It was a difficult time for
Yeah.
her parents and my mom. I believe she ended up getting disfellowshipped for a little bit before I came along, but I think my sister's on the way. But as far as her relationship with her parents, it was a little bit difficult. From what I've heard, my dad had a decent relationship with her parents, but as far as the relationship with the rest of the family, they have been cordial with my dad throughout the years. I would always feel like my dad was kind of the odd man out in family functions, like family, because Osby's do reunions, yearly. But it wasn't anything where it was like they hated my dad or anything. They never.
No, it's cordial cool.
Yeah.
It's cordial cool. You can tell. In other words, if you had cousins, their family was just the whole family. But with you clearly knew as a kid growing up that y'all won't like the rest of the people who were witnesses.
Absolutely.
It would not take long to figure out as a young child, like, we ain't really like the rest of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely the case. Like,
yeah.
We're a bit different. And the fact that my dad's not a witness, I estimated that was the case back when I was probably 8 or 9.
Because remember, one of the things is, on one hand, they got to be cool toward him to let your mom know we really don't approve of this. But on the other hand, we might can bring him into the truth at the same time. So you got both scenarios working. We can't be cruel to him, because then he'll walk away. And so it's a constant battle that a witness has, as opposed to, like, is he taking care of her? Or our grandkids got shoes on, they got food, roof over their head? That kind of stuff don't matter to a witness.
Exactly.
All they know is your dad don't move books. That's all they know.
That's something else. It's very true.
Right. Now, what was it like for you? So now we need to start talking about how you woke up. What were some of the things that, got you to thinking about this not being the truth?
So if I had to put it on a timeline, I would say the first time I ever thought about leaving, I was 17 years old. And it was only at that time because of being in high school, and I just kind of want to fit in and be like the rest of my friends. Nothing doctrinal at all at that point. But around 17, I just started thinking, like, maybe I should try to widen out and meet more people, because I've only been hanging around the people I grew up with my whole life. So maybe I'm just bored. Maybe I'm just bored, and I need to just try to expose myself to more witnesses. So I spent about 3 years doing that and meeting as many witnesses around my age that I could, and I got really involved heavily socially as a witness for a good 3 years. But just kind of questions that I probably have always had just kept creeping up and gnawing at me. So at 21 years old, the month I was 21, that's when I'd say things started speeding up for me as far as waking up. I started getting into a lot of self-help literature and seminars and books. And it was in that process that I started, just hearing about different philosophies of how to, pursue your dreams and, to accomplish your goals and to get more out of life. And that is kind of, I guess, contradictory to the Jehovah's Witness, going after secular dreams, trying to advance yourself in, in this world. So it was during a seminar that I was listening to that I heard the speaker say, a lot of times in order to progress in life, you have to cut out negative influences. And that means, people, family, friends. Sometimes religion is another hindrance in your personal growth. And when I heard that, I immediately agreed with it, because I was like, that's how I feel about the witnesses. I'm always being told, you can't pursue this. Don't be reaching for this. Don't be seeking great things for yourself. Hearing that constantly just never felt good as a witness. So hearing that, I was like, I agree with it, but this isn't a religion that you can just put on the shelf and, just be okay. Like, yeah, I can just put this over here and, go after my dreams and everything will be fine, because I have all my family in this. Like, I can't just put them on the shelf. It's a package deal. This religion is, everything I've really known. So that thought and that hearing that never left me, because it spoke so much truth to me. So I sat on that for a while, and a couple months later, the 2016 convention came up, and that was the convention that I was not looking forward to going to at all. I had the expectation of going to that convention and hearing, don't be seeking great things for yourself. Don't chase after your dreams. Your dreams are wrong. Seek for, the kingdom and all that kind of stuff. So going to that convention was a major turning point. It was a pivotal moment for my my waking up process. Get to that convention. Sure enough, they had the bunker video, which was super strange to me at the time. I was like, this feels very weird. I don't know about this. I don't know if this is something I want to be a part of. And on top of that, they had the Sergey video where the kid, wanted to play the violin, and his dad was, telling him that, you shouldn't be playing violin for the world, because the world is going to take you away from Jehovah. No matter, how good you are at the violin, no matter how much you want to play it, you can't do it in the way that you want to. You can't pursue it the way you want to, because it'll take you away from Jehovah. So watching that video, I was just like, this is exactly what I didn't want to come here and see this, because this is another way that they just try to continue to shut down your dreams. So after that, I knew I was in big trouble. I was like, I don't know how much more of that I can take. So then a couple months after that, my friend went up to Bethel to do some temporary assignment work. And he came back and he told me some experiences that he had up there that really shocked me, to say the least. When he got back, he was like, "Man, I never seen so much liquor before in my life. Like they really drink up there." And on top of that, he was like, he heard on more than a couple of occasions that people were getting caught in homosexual acts and stuff like that. So after hearing that, I was like, man, like that's going on at the top. Like I thought Bethel was supposed to be, this, pristine environment. Like this is nothing, nothing goes on at Bethel that's bad. So after hearing that, I was like, I don't know if this is it. Like I don't know if this religion is what I want to do. And on a side note, I was saying earlier how I had developed a quite large social circle by that time, but we were all around the same age of 20, 21 years old, 19, 20, 21 years old. So a lot of these people that I started meeting a few years earlier were now starting to get engaged in serious relationships and getting married. So one by one, my social group started getting smaller and smaller, because people were pairing off and getting married. And I knew for myself, I wasn't going to get married at, 21 years old. So my activities started to decrease, and that led me to have more time to think, because I wasn't kind of distracting myself with, just Jehovah's Witness social life anymore. So in that time, I just started thinking like, man, I don't know if this is what I want to do. Like I have things that I want to do in my life and, strive for. And I'm starting to find out a lot of things that just don't sit well with me about this religion. So about a month later, after I heard that story from my friend, I think that was the first time I ever typed in how to leave the organization, how to leave Jehovah Witness. And a video popped up, and the guy was explaining, there are 3 ways you can leave the organization. You can get disfellowshipped, you can disassociate, or you can fade. And I was like, I know I don't want to get disfellowshipped. I know I don't want to disassociate. Maybe I'll fade because I just need some time to think about what I want to do with my life without the pressure of this organization being, on me at all times. It was then that I started the process of fading, or just learning about that option of fading and taking a break and stepping away from the organization. A few weeks later, after watching that video, I started typing in some more videos. And that's when your video popped up about, why an ex-Bethelite leaves Watchtower. And after watching that video, that's when I started to realize that there were major doctrinal issues with the religion. And that's what caused me to start doing a lot more research on the actual doctrine of the organization.
Okay, good.
Very good, yeah.
So one of the important things that I realized leading up to my departure from the organization, how I faded, and some of the stuff that helped me out the most was doing research about the organization and realizing that once you do your research, you can leave with a clearer mind than having left with doing absolutely no research. So to me, continue to do your research, doing your research. If you're watching this video and, you're still going to the meetings, this isn't, you're not doing anything wrong. Like, it's okay to watch a video to get a different perspective. That's all. You're just trying to get a different perspective than what you are being told at the hall, which is normal. That's why we're all here. We want to get a different perspective. So continue to do your research. I would say is the most important thing to do. So if you're between the ages of 15 and 18 years old right now, if you're not baptized, do your research. Continue to do your research and find out if that's something that you want to commit to. If you want to become baptized, I'm not here to tell you, one way or another. That's a decision you can make. But what I will say is just continue to do your research and find out if that's something that you want to commit your life to. You have a whole life ahead of you. Do you want to be doing that, or do you want to do something else? Do something else with your life? The choice is yours. Start thinking now about where you want to end up in life. Do you still picture yourself being in the organization 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Or do you picture something else for your life? If you are starting to think that you want something else for your life, start preparing for that now. If you're still living at home with a parent or 2 parents who are Jehovah's Witnesses, take your time. Everybody's situation is different. When I woke up, I was 21 years old. I had started working full time, so I had some money that I was saving up. But if you're 15, you may or may not be working right now. You don't want to, even if you don't get disfellowship, because in my case, I never got disfellowship and I never disassociated. I just quietly walked away. And it didn't take long for all those friends that I had started building up to start shunning me. So even, you have to prepare yourself for the fact that no matter how you leave, there are going to be people that aren't going to deal with you. Like, you just have to accept that. That's just the cards that you get dealt. But, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You'll be fine. Like, it sucks, but, you can, in my experience, worse things have happened in my life than that. So if you're living with a Jehovah's Witness parent or parents and you're under the age of 18, or maybe you're older than 18. The important thing now for you, if you decide that you want to move in a different direction with your life, away from the organization, the important thing is to prepare your circumstances. If you're not working, start thinking about getting a job and saving up some money. Don't make any quick decisions if you don't have a foundation right now. Give yourself some time to prepare a nice solid foundation so that when you can leave, you can leave without shooting yourself in the foot financially, getting in trouble, starting to develop bad habits because you just weren't prepared to deal with the reality of being on your own. So take some time. Like if you have to put up, a brave front as far as, meeting attendance and field service and all that stuff, just go through that. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. At least you see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. If you've gotten to the point where you are deciding to move in a different direction, just give yourself some time. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years. If you're 15 years old and you say at 18, I want to move out, I want to get away from the organization, you got 3 years to, start working. If you want to go to college, start preparing that. If you want to just go out into the world, start working, start thinking about that now. Take some time and really decide what direction you want to move toward.
Yeah, that's that's good information. It's so important that if you're a young person, don't argue with your parents.
So preparing to move out of your parents' house, if you're between the ages of 15 and 18, if you're moving in that direction, definitely try to get about 6 to 12 months of living expenses together so that you can move out as comfortably as you can. Because nobody wants to move out to no money. Like if you want to move out, you want to move out as comfortably as you can. So I definitely recommend that. If you're and also try to avoid developing bad habits. I know in my case, the temptation was there to, all right, I'm 21, I'm leaving the organization. It's tempting to try to dive into everything you felt like you were restricted from, getting involved in as a witness. But it's good to not develop bad habits because they can have lifelong consequences if you have no guidance. So, getting into drugs or just, premarital sex, there's a lot of premarital sex. There's a lot of things that can have lifelong consequences if you're not careful. So I would definitely avoid developing bad habits. Not to discard everything that you heard at the Kingdom Hall, especially because there are valuable lessons that you can take into the rest of your life. Just having morals and having kind of a compass as far as morals are concerned. I think that's important to try to keep So if you're between the ages of 15 and 18, if you can start a business, I definitely recommend it. If you have some friends, maybe at school or in your neighborhood, or maybe even some friends at the hall like you who may be, questioning things, if you can form a business with some friends, I would definitely recommend doing that. If you have some graduation money coming up soon, if I could do it over again, I would use the money I got from my graduation of high school and try to start a business, try to start some form of side passive income to help you in your future. Something preferably you enjoy doing with your time. If you're between the ages of 19 and 21 years old, I would definitely say that you should avoid getting into unnecessary debt because that will slow down your financial freedom. Just car payments, credit card debt, unnecessary student loan debts. If you can avoid these things, definitely try to stay out of debt. Another major thing, JW marriages. If you are between the ages of 19 and 21 and you are kind of questioning your beliefs and you may be in a relationship with a person who is very solid as a Jehovah's Witness, you definitely want to reconsider if that's the person you want to marry. I would hate for you to get into a marriage with somebody if you're questioning whether you want to say a Jehovah's Witness or not. Because a year from now, 6 months from now, if you decide, yeah, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, and you're now married to somebody who is, what was the point of that? So definitely try to avoid that if you can. Again, if you're between 19 and 21, if you can start a business, start a business. If you're in school and you like it and that's the path you want to take, continue with your education. That's important. Try and build good friendships, solid friendships outside of the organization. In my own case, I started to neglect a lot of the friends that I had in school and just started focusing all on my organization friends. And when I decided to walk away from the organization, all those friends I stopped talking to, pretty much overnight. It was not a long period of time that went by when, I had no more I had no more relationships with the friends I had in the organization. So developing good friendships outside of the organization now is a great way to set up your social circle if and when you do decide to leave. And if you're between the ages of 22 and 25, right now, since we're all kind of on quarantine still, try and develop some new skills. Introduce yourself to some new books. Just try to increase your knowledge and some new opportunities for yourself while we have more time at home. It's a great way. It's a great time to expand your skill sets and maybe try to create some new opportunities for yourself. And again, if you want to start a business, if you can, start a business and continue to try to build good friendships and relationships outside of the organization. If you're 26 and up, if you're older than 25, I would definitely say if you have kids and you're starting to have questions about the organization, stop indoctrinating your kids. It doesn't make sense to indoctrinate your kids with beliefs that you are now starting to question and you're starting to doubt maybe. Because at that point you'll just be continuing the cycle. And if we can avoid that, I think that would be good.
Now, what was it like for you growing up in the congregation? Were you expected to be a shining star? How was your life growing up?
I would say my witness experience was not so regimented or strict, where it was, you got to be a ministerial servant at 18, and you got to be a regular pioneer, or you have to be homeschooled, and you got to be a Bethelite by 21. My experience was, be a good Jehovah's Witness, be consistent. As long as you keep Jehovah first, everything's good. Try to, keep up with a regular good study, participate. But it wasn't so strict where you have to be this shining star. I didn't grow up in that household.
That's good.
So what about your dad? What kind of things would you say your dad helped you with in terms of balancing your life?
I would say he was the person that would lead by example as far as lifestyle, that he was living his life on his own terms and that it was okay to make your own decisions about how you want to live life. I would say as far as that was kind of his contribution to maybe me starting to think differently about how I could live life. That, my dad's not a witness and, he's living his life, making his own choices and decisions in life. Maybe I can do the same. Like that was probably the most I got from my dad.
My dad never got baptized, but he did study with a lot of different brothers, and he just couldn't. My dad had a problem that the elders were too much in your business. That was his basic. Yeah, that was his basic issue. Because he would always hear the friends say, "I'm going to the elders. I'm going to the elders." And my dad was like, "Well, ain't she married? Ain't she got a husband or something?" And so that was always the problem. And of course, my mom would often use the phrase, "I'm gonna talk to the elders," and my dad was like, "Well, that's nice, but run it by me first." And so, why do you think your father, even though he was around your prominent witness family, but it just never clicked for him. I want to be a Jehovah's Witness. And what do you think was what made him take a pause and said, might be for you, but that's not for me? What do you think that was?
I think very similar to your dad's experience. My dad also, I remember, my dad had a few studies as far back as I can remember, throughout the years. He may have had, 2 or 3 different brothers come through for, 6-month period of study, and then it would fall apart, and then maybe a few years later, pick a study up again. A few months later, not really going anywhere with it. So I think for my dad, it was mainly him trying to figure out what the witness belief was all about. And I think the disfellowshipping was a major red flag for him. He would say this to me. He was like, I would never want something to happen, and because I'm a baptized Jehovah's Witness, now if I get disfellowship, I can't have communication with my kids. That was one thing I think that never sat well with him, and he never, went down the road of baptism because of that.
That's an excellent point. In fact, we've had this discussion many times. You'll hear people will make mention of this. This is typically a subject that a Jehovah's Witness who's having a Bible study with just a regular person who knows nothing about the witnesses, this is a subject matter that they generally don't go over much. But because your dad was part of a Jehovah's Witness family by default of being married, he got the chance to see this topic or this issue of disfellowshipping, how it worked out in practical terms. But the average person you work with on your job, they really don't know what disfellowshipping is. They don't know how it works. And so you would wonder if people were actually to go over as part of the Bible, in other words, as a chapter, what happens if you get disfellowship? If they would actually have a Bible study on that, and that's part of the Bible study arrangement, when they get to that part where then you ain't gonna be able to talk to your grandbaby no more, and you ain't gonna be able to talk to your uncle, they'd be like, y'all must be crazy.
For real.
Y'all must be crazy.
Yeah, and see, your father, he was introduced to the disfellowshipping because being married to your mom,
Yep.
who was disfellowship, and he saw all of that.
Yep. And that was one of the things that definitely turned, I guess, put a sour taste in his mouth early on about the whole structure of the witnesses.
Yes, because his reference point and the average person's reference point, that makes no sense. They've seen people in their churches make mistakes, might have a problem with drinking, or they may have a child out of wedlock, but they ain't never seen the entire church just shut down. You walk into a building and you pass 150 people and they don't even see you. That the average person has no reference point to that. And that's why when we talk about shunning and so forth to people who are not witnesses, they really can't, because they don't have a reference. They just can't imagine a mom and a daddy not talking to their kids because something the pastor said. They be like, you must be crazy. I mean, I love Pastor Johnson, but forget him. He ain't paying the bills over here. And they would go on. But in the world of Jehovah's Witnesses, that's what happens. That's part of the culture.
And at the time, my mom was going through her own disfellowshipment, her mother was sick. So he got to witness her being disfellowship, her mom being sick, and the tension that was going on at the time of, all that going on, the strain that kind of caused on my mom and her mom's relationship, with my mom being disfellowship at the time. So all of that, I think, was like, he didn't understand, like, how can you be disfellowship? Your mom's sick. These brothers are saying, you can't go talk to your sick mom, and she's on her deathbed. He was like, I couldn't imagine somebody telling me I couldn't go see my mom on her deathbed because of, disfellowshipment, whatever that means. So that was another thing that didn't make any sense to my dad.
Yeah, that's a very powerful personal experience he had. Okay.
So, I think that was something that he never could get past, so he never adopted the faith.
You had mentioned before about your father and some of the types of advice that you would like to give to parents who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. What was that?
So, to a non-Jehovah's Witness parent, I would say the number one thing is to always be a good role model to your kids and to your family, because the witnesses will do their best to shine a negative light on you. So don't give them extra bullets to assassinate your own character. So another important point is to realize that the organization is constantly trying to tell your kids that they are fatherless children and that your viewpoints are less relevant than the organization's. So yeah, my own experience, I was told on several occasions that I was like a young Timothy, and I have the mother and grandmother who are believers, but I have an unbelieving father. So often I felt like the people at the hall and the brothers at the hall, their advice and their counsel began to match, and even in a lot of cases surpass the advice that my own father, flesh and blood father, was giving me, because the constant indoctrination of your father's boy, your dad isn't spiritually minded, so his whatever parenting he's giving you isn't coming from Jehovah's thinking, and that you always need to have Jehovah's thinking on matter, whatever it is, and that these brothers always have Jehovah's thinking on matter. So you default start going toward the kingdom hall rather than talking to your own parent. So it's important to realize that that is what's going on at the hall. If you are a non-Jehovah Witness parent, you have to realize that your kids are constantly being told that they are fatherless children, or that your own viewpoints and your own parenting is not as important as the counsel that your kids are receiving at the hall. So yeah, one thing my dad's always told me, he was like, I think he had his own experience being married young, and he realized that he was, far too immature to be married that young. I forget how old he was at the time, but he couldn't have been more than 23 or so. And he always said to me, yeah, if you get married, try to wait till you're past 30, so that you can have time to grow and learn and develop. So when he would always hear about us going to these weddings where the bride and the groom were 18, 19, 20, he'd be like, what's going on? Like, why are all these people getting married so young? And I don't know how real we can keep it on here, but
We can keep it real.
real. Okay. The reason why these marriages are going on is because they want to have sex. A lot of times that's the case. And, that's not a reason to just get married, especially at, 18, when you don't know anything. You haven't been through much, and this is what you're being told you have to do. It's better married than, burn.
So yeah, you mentioned that your dad, he quickly observed that a lot of witness kids, they get married very young. What do you think is the reason behind that? We know that, as you mentioned before, intimacy and having sex, but the much broader picture, why do you think that?
I definitely think a lack of options has contributes to a early marriage, a young marriage. If you don't have college to look forward to, if you don't have a dream that you want to chase, a career that you like to pursue, earn money and travel, see the world, if you're discouraged from doing and pursuing a lot of these things, it would be my assumption that you would become bored, and this is the next best thing to do. This is how I can feel like I'm accomplishing something, the next level in my life. And I'll get this other person who is in the same boat as me, who lives in the same area as me, and we get married and try to be happy that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have to agree that they have very limited options, as you mentioned, and that impacts the decision. Yeah.
And what about you coming up as a youngster? Were you ever homeschooled? And if not, do you know anybody in your congregation that was, and what was the experience?
Well, growing up, me and my close circle of friends at the time, we all went to public school. We went, K through 12, regular school. It wasn't until I graduated high school that I started meeting other witnesses who had been homeschooled. And I guess to me, and my observation was that their parents were very active Jehovah's Witnesses, and that their education was not important at all in their household. College wasn't going to be an option for them, not because they couldn't afford it, but they just weren't going to be exposed to it. It was only going to be the Jehovah's Witness path, and regular pioneering and trying to serve where the need is great, that kind of stuff. Those families had those kind of goals in my experience.
That's a very interesting statement you made, is that it's as if the parents who were homeschooling, they really weren't really much concerned about their educational level. I know here in the Washington, D.C. area, they have what's called the National Spelling Bee. And it's interesting how, like, the last couple of years they've been doing it. The kids who make it to the top of the National Spelling Bee, those kids are homeschooled.
Yeah.
And from my experience too, it seemed like the kids who were being homeschooled, a lot of their time at home was spent in the ministry. So when they were supposed to be doing homeschooling, they would do a little bit of homeschooling, but mainly they would be in the ministry. So I was like, how much homeschooling are you getting if the time you're supposed to be in school, you're knocking on doors? You seem like
It's funny,
always be out knocking on doors. So I'm like, you're not even in school. And I know I had a good friend who he was supposed to graduate this year, but it just kept getting pushed back. I'm like, when are you gonna graduate, man? Like, the date just kept getting pushed back. So I'm like, you're never gonna graduate, and at this speed. But he always be out in service. So
it's funny you said, because we have talked to people who were homeschooled, and do you realize that their parents, basically their position was, we're going to go out and field service, and this is like our community. Well, you know how in regular school you might do something community stuff. Well, the witness parent says, well, this is going to be the community part of your homeschool. Like, man.
Yeah, because I grew up I went straight through school, regular traditional school. So I always felt like, even though I was a witness, I still had a bit of exposure to the real world. And the kids that I eventually ended up meeting who didn't have that exposure, in my experience, seemed like I always exposed them to a lot of things that they wouldn't have been exposed to because they didn't go to regular school. So just different music or movies or just places they wouldn't have ever seen, because they were just hanging around their parents or a parent, and they were just by themselves, at school or at home school, or just hanging out with people from the Kingdom Hall.
So they were sheltered.
So yeah, they were very sheltered.
Sheltered and sometimes naive. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I met a nice handful of homeschool kids, and the story seemed to be the same as far as they were really in homeschool to pioneer more. Like, once they got to high school, upper, 11th, 10th, 11th grade in homeschool, they were really focused more on, the preaching work versus their schooling.
So Thomas, I just want to say thanks, man, for taking the time this afternoon to share your personal experience and just your personal observations and just basically practical suggestions on how to move forward. As I always tell people, living well is always the best revenge. And that's what we want to do. We want to leave this organization, hit the ground running, and live well. Live our life well. We don't want to become, as we've discussed before, we don't want to become a Jehovah's Witness poster child. And the good thing is you don't have to. And this is kind of what makes this whole thing nice, is that today, unlike years ago, we have many channels, many sources, many references, many contacts that we all can use that can help each and every one of us move along the path. Because all we're really trying to do at this point is just heal. And everybody has a different amount of hurt, a different depth of hurt. But one thing is for sure, we can help each other move along the path and heal. This has been JT.
And this has been Lady C.
And this is Thomas, and I appreciate being on the program.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.